Today we will see chapter number 4 of book Insurance Regulations. The discussion will be on rural and social sector, IRDAI requirement and regulations, micro insurance and micro insurance agents, ULIP insurance plan, that is ULIP regulations, ULIP guidelines of IRDAI, then about receipt of premium regulations, money laundering and CFT, know your customer and advertising regulations. So we are starting with rural sector. Rural sector is sector where any place or area is classified as such in last 10-year session of Government of India. Last 10 years census of Government of India. Mainly in this area, the residents are engaged in agriculture pursuits. They are cultivators, agricultural laborers, workers in livestock, forestry, fishing, hunting, plantation, orchards and allied activities. Similarly, social sector. This is unorganized sector like laborers or porters or the people who are selling fruits and vegetables. They are generally informal sector, not having member of any union, etc. They are economically vulnerable. They are generally below poverty line. They are from backward classes. Other categories of persons are those who are disabled and they require insurance support, or their guardians also requires insurance support to maintain these disabled relatives. This can be in rural area, in urban areas, even in metropolitan cities like Bombay, etc., where there are porters, dabbawalas, etc. So social sector does not have any space specific, it is rather occupation specific area. For rural and social sector, IRDAI is having many regulations and it is always emphasis on any government to see that this sector is given enough protection financially. Then there is also informal sector, which is small scale industries, self-employed workers, those who are working at lower level of organizational technology. So for them there may not be any direct beneficial insurances, but there are many indirect beneficial insurances. Like once upon a time in fire tariff, there was special rate for small scale industries. Now, as per IRDAI regulations, every insurance company operating in life sector should have minimum premium of this many percentage, like 7% in first year, 2% in 9% in second year, 12% in third year, 14% in fourth year, 16% in fifth year of gross direct premium income of the company. If these targets are not met, then IRDAI may impose some fines. From time to time, IRDAI is declaring that for next year, what should be the percentage of premium. Then for 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th, they have declared other percentage. They can declare also for year-specific percentages. Similarly, for non-life insurance sector, it is required that 2% of premium should be in first year, 3% in second year, 5% in third year of GDPI. Then once again, for next year, they may declare either specifically that for particular this much should be premium, or percentage-wise, like 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, 5%, 5%, 6, 6, and 7% of gross direct premium income. For social sector, for as far as life and general insurance or non-life companies are concerned, it is related to number of lives. 5,000, 7,000, 10,000, 15,000, they should cover at least this many lives under their policies. Then now third branch has come in the last few years, that is micro insurance sector. It is mainly low cost insurance premium policies it is for low net worth clients who are poor, maybe below poverty line, but they require insurance protection. And the schemes are to be operated through network of micro insurance units for better risk management. As you know, the law of large number applies in insurance. So more and more members are part of this network. Risk management can be done in better way. Generally, for micro insurance, there is no bifurcation of life and non-life. Generally, these type of products are part of micro insurance. Crop insurance, livestock or cattle insurance, theft insurance, health insurance, term life, natural disaster, personal accident cover. So these are handled by micro insurance sector. For micro insurance, IRDA issues separate license but as agent, and these licenses are given to NGOs, non-governmental organizations, self-help groups or microfinance institutions. Even individuals can apply for this license also, or even broker can do this business also. But the condition is that once agent takes this activity, he has to stick to only micro insurance. So agents are having some additional responsibilities as far as micro insurance is concerned. They have to do additional servicing of the policies and claims. They have to collect documents from insurance company, deliver to the clients. They have to collect claim checks, claim documents, etc. So all these additional services are there. For that, additional remunerations are also paid by insurance companies. Another important aspect of this agency working is that agent may appoint employees with consent of IRDA and insurance companies. Then whatever micro insurance products are there, those products are to be filed with IRDA. They should be simple in language and should be in regional languages. It should be easily understandable, and it is to be seen that they are free from legal and technical jargons. All products are having minimum and maximum sum insured and special terms and conditions which are less stringent and to be approved by IRDA. There is no separate micro insurance sector, but it is treated as part of rural and social sector. So whatever business is gained or whatever lives are covered, insurance company can treat them as rural and social sector to complete that target of rural insurance business, also a social sector insurance business. As we saw that NGOs, self-help groups and microfinance institutions are actively involved in these type of insurances. Micro insurance agent to distribute only micro insurance products. There is no micro insurance agent category separate. He is given agency license only. But once he starts doing micro insurance, he has to stick to that branch only. He is appointed by agreement with the insurance company, and the copy of agreement is to be approved by head office of the insurance company. So divisional office or branch office, whoever appoints him, should enter into agreement, and this agreement should be approved by head office of insurance company. Like any other normal agency, one life and one non-life insurance company, he can work with. That is the requirement for agent. As we saw that he can employ subordinates to help him as his employees, and insurance consent is required. If other persons are employed to do marketing, then they have to be observing code of conduct, and insurance company has to impart them 25 hours training in local language. Local language may be different than regional language, but it is responsibility of insurance company to arrange minimum 25 hours training for agent, specified person appointed by him, and other marketing people. Micro insurance agent gets different commission, and their maximum percentage is laid down by IRDA. In case of life, it can be 10% of single premium policy, and 20% in other products per year. In case of non-life, it is 15% flat for all the products, and in case of group policies, it is discretion of insurance company to decide how much remuneration is to be given. There is no fixed rate. Taking into consideration various aspects, they have to decide. Generally, group policies are for micro sector 20% minimum number. Insurance parameters have also been laid down under regulations. For life, they lay down type of cover. Here we are not dealing in great detail. You can refer to the book for these parameters, and if you are more concerned about exam, then you have to read them in detail, because in this presentation it is not possible to give fuller details of all the parameters. They are dealing with type of cover, what type of cover is to be devised, broad guidelines, minimum amount of cover and maximum amount of cover, so that big amounts are not put, so that they cannot go out of micro insurance philosophy. Minimum term of cover and maximum term of cover is also specified. Minimum age at entry is also specified, and maximum age at entry is also specified. And for group policies, minimum number should be 20, maximum there is no limit, because it is to encourage that more and more people join group schemes also, where it is not possible to give them individual policies. For non-life, similar requirements are there about type of cover, minimum and maximum amount of cover, minimum and maximum term. Now, general insurance policies, maximum is only 1 year. Why? Because under Act, no policy can be issued for more than 1 year unless it is approved by IRDA. So, till now, for micro insurance products, maximum term, like any other general insurance policy, is 1 year. Maximum age for health insurance products and personal insurance products are there, like life. In property insurance or crop insurance, this is not relevant. And like life, group policies should be issued for minimum number of 20 years. Maximum, there is no binding, maximum number can be any number of people. As I told you, that the aim is to see that more and more people join group policies, where it is not possible to give them individual policies, like group personal accident policy, group medical insurance policy, etc. So that was about rural insurance sector, rural insurance, social sector, and micro insurance. Now I will be dealing with very important type of cover under life insurance, that is unit linked insurance plan, that is popularly known as ULIP, unit linked insurance plan. Now this is combination of mutual fund. Mutual fund is to invest indirectly in stock exchange, so it is a type of investment. Pure investment is mutual fund, then plus insurance cover. So mutual fund and insurance cover are combined into one product, plus the insured can have advantage of, policyholder can have advantage of rebate in income tax. So it is combination of mutual fund, insurance, and income tax benefits. So if person goes for mutual fund, he may not get income tax benefit. If he goes only for mutual fund, he cannot get mutual fund benefit, income tax benefit. If he goes only for insurance cover, he will not get benefit of advantages of investing in stock market. So this is combination of both mutual fund plus insurance. Now there are broadly three types of mutual funds. Conservative funds, these are traditional type of funds where investment is made only in government securities and bonds, etc. Nothing is invested in stock market. So their returns are low. So these products of mutual fund are not very attractive. So there is another type of fund called aggressive fund. In aggressive fund, everything is invested in stock exchange. So return may be high if market is rising, or return may go low if market is falling. So it is very risky as far as investments are concerned. But because they are managed by professionals who are highly experienced, highly qualified in the field, generally the chances of losing money are less. So many people prefer aggressive fund. But best option would be to invest in balanced fund. Balanced fund is combination of both debt fund and equity fund. Debt fund is, as we saw, is conservative fund, investment in government securities and bonds, and aggressive fund is equity fund. So part of the investment is invested in debt fund and part is invested in equity fund. So advantages of both the types are there. There is stable return out of the debt fund and unstable return, which may be higher or lower, is in equity fund. If market is doing well, fund out of income out of equity fund will be higher, so person will be gaining. Plus at the same time, investment in debt fund will protect his investment to a minimum extent. So minimum return is coming, so risk is that extent reduced. There was a time when insurance companies were projecting only ULIP and there was no control on ULIP products. Though it was said to be insurance product, the guidelines of insurance products were not followed. Generally, insurance product is for longer period. Life insurance is for long-term investment. It was treated as short-term, and many ULIP schemes were there, which are basically mutual fund schemes and hardly any cover on the life insurance. So IRDA alerted and it formed guidelines in 2005 for ULIP products. So first and foremost, there is lock-in period and there is minimum 5 years. As we saw that any life insurance product should be for long term. So long term cannot be less than 5 years. It can be more than 5 years, but not less than 5 years. At that time, there were many policies in market with term only of 1 year or 3 years. So that was against the principle of life insurance. So IRDA framed regulation, minimum 5 years term is required. Until my 5 years term is over, from taking up of the policy or taking up of any additional cover, no payment is to be made even under lapse policy, surrender policy and policies which are discontinued. The purpose is that investment remains in life insurance cover or ULIP cover for 5 years. All ULIP policies should be for minimum 5 years. Even single premium policies are allowed for less than 5 years, but other policies should be for 5 years. Then whatever charges are to be charged should be spread over during the full lock-in period, that is over 5 years. Equally distribution is required. What are the charges? We will see slightly later on. Because earlier insurance companies used to charge heavy during initial periods and lesser during subsequent periods. So in some cases the charges were up to extent of 65 or 70% of the premium. So if policy is cancelled or surrendered in initial period, hardly any refunds were there. So to discourage such practices, other than putting cap on charges, IRDA has framed regulation to see that all charges are distributed evenly. All types of ULIPs have level paying premium and additional premium. So this is very important. Premium should be level paying and even for additional premium. All top-up premium are treated as single premium. What is top-up premium? When insured wants to increase the sum insured or take additional cover, he can put in more money, but here it is treated as single premium. And other regulations of lock-in period, etc., are generally not applicable for top-up premium. There should be minimum return of 4.5%. This is called guaranteed return. So ULIP should have minimum return of 4.5. Even the scheme is performing or not performing yet, investments, insurance companies should pay minimum 4.5% as a guaranteed return. Or if IRDA says it should be more or less, it should be as per IRDA guidelines. But if there are no guidelines, then guideline is for 4.5% minimum guaranteed return at the end of the scheme. Generally under ULIP and annuities, partial withdrawal is not allowed. Accumulation fund to be converted into annuity on the date of vesting. Wherever the scheme ends, it is date of vesting. On that day, whatever is the fund, that is to be converted into annuity and to be paid over a period of time. For charges, etc., maximum reduction in yield is 3% for policies up to 10 years and 2.25% for policies more than 10 years. So, insurance company can frame tables for in between years. That tables are available in the book. You may refer to them. As far as loans are concerned, on ULIP, maximum loan limits are 40% if the investment is in equity funds and 50% if major part is in debt funds. Of NAV, net asset value. What is net asset value? It is the value of any unit which is calculated by taking into consideration total value of fund on a given date divided by outstanding units. Suppose total value of fund on a given date is 12 crore and outstanding unit in that scheme, particular investment schemes, mutual fund scheme, is 1 crore. So 12 crore divided by 1 crore is 12 rupees. So NAV of particular unit will be 12 rupees. Minimum mortality cover. So as we saw that it is ULIP is combination of investment plus life insurance. So life insurance should be having part of unit. Without that it is not possible. So regulation says that age on the entry can be less than 45 years. It can be more than 45 years. So this should be add-on cover or minimum cover along with unit. This is linked plan. Similar for, it can be linked to health cover also. Similarly, the scheme should be different for less than 45 years and more than 45 years. So mutual fund or investment part can be linked to life cover or health cover. So as we saw that unit is mainly life insurance plus health and plus other benefits, or life plus other benefits. It should be as per approved index, which are to be approved by IRDA. ULIP is as per IRDA, whatever investment is made by insurance company should be only in approved securities. It cannot be invested in non-approved securities. Non-approved securities can only be maximum of 25% of total fund invested. So 75% of the funds should be in approved securities. That means safe funds like bonds or government securities, etc., infrastructure funds, etc., and very risky investments like stock exchange or money market, other money markets should not be more than 25%. This is to take care of safety aspect of policyholders. Because in ULIP, whatever is the risk is on the insured. Under normal insurance policy of life, insurance company also invest in mutual funds and stock exchanges. But in that case, as far as policyholder is concerned, his money is protected. In ULIP, it is different. He is protected only for basic life insurance. The other part, the investment part, there is no protection from insurance company other than 4.5% guaranteed return. So whatever is profit or loss is on policyholder's account. So to protect that aspect, there is cap on investment in non-approved securities. Otherwise, if insurance company decision goes wrong or insurance company would like to speculate only in stock exchange, the investment fund may be wiped off. So to protect that aspect, IRD has framed regulations and they have put cap on maximum investment in non-approved securities. Other important regulations for ULIP is that compulsory practical training is to be given to intermediaries, because ULIP is not a simple product. The person selling ULIP should be having knowledge of other investment avenues like mutual fund, stock exchange, etc., so they can give more information to the client and client can take a clear decision. So practical training is required about products, life insurance, and separate training for ULIP. So ULIP is important, separate training is to be given. All records of training are to be kept, who attended, duration of training, faculty, etc., and wherever required, they are to be submitted to IRDA. Then product supporting documents are to be given to the intermediaries so that they can guide their policyholders properly. Similarly, clients should be educated properly by giving newspaper advertisement, other form of advertisements, calling them and giving some information. Changes in the ULIP market are also to be informed to the policyholders either directly or through intermediaries. As far as rounding of unit price is concerned, the life insurance company should follow similar practice so that there is no confusion as far as policyholders are concerned, because if they want to compare which scheme is better, they can compare properly. Units are for small amounts, but rounding off can change the value of product at the time of maturity. So this method is also required to be uniform as far as market is concerned. This can be done by Life Insurance Council if required, or insurance can come together and decide themselves. As we saw that ULIP is basically a life insurance product. So life insurance underwriting parameters are to be followed. IRDA came out with regulations because it was treated once upon a time as investment products, and many of the criteria of life insurance underwriting were not followed by insurance company. It should be long-term product, so minimum should be 5 years. It can be longer than 5 years. It should pay guaranteed sum insured on death, and that is to be declared in advance. If you treat it as investment product, profit and loss is on the client, and it may happen that full investment, if it is made not properly, it can be wiped off and client may not get anything, policyholder cannot get anything at the end of the term. So IRDA says that sum insured should be guaranteed on death. It can be 100% of premium paid or 125% of premium paid by the client. There should be 5 years lock-in period. This is minimum. It can be more also. Partial withdrawal allowed subject to certain conditions, but amount is not to be paid. It should be remain in the fund for lock-in period. Top-up premium is allowed, but it will remain. It will be treated as single premium. Maximum loan can be given up to 40% of surrender value, not more than that. As we saw earlier, it should be related to what type of investments are made, whether in conventional products or stock exchange, etc. Maturity payment on date of vesting. Suppose the term is 5 years. After 5 years, the amount will be due, but is not to be paid immediately. So it is to be spread over a period of time, and that is to be decided by policyholder in advance. Because if they, on the date of vesting, suppose the market is at lower end, then amount available out of investment part may be lower. So once it is spread over, then that is taken care of. Pricing should be such that it is in interest of assureds, and major parts should not be taken by insurance company by way of expenses, etc. That's why there are limit on charges. We saw that what are the limits. So that was about unit-linked insurance plan. Now we'll see about money laundering. Money laundering is also a major problem in India nowadays, because a second economy is operating, which is called black market. So as per one estimate or many researches, whatever money is there in legal channel, much more money is flowing in illegal channels. Till recently, nobody was much concerned about illegal channels also. But then the time came when terrorism, etc., became more active, and money was provided by illegal channels or black market to hide the identity of terrorists. Similarly, narcotics gangs, etc., also were operative. So it became problem world over to control these activities of terrorism and drug trafficking. So to control this activity, it was required to have corporation worldwide and form and take action, form regulations and take action against these type of activities to control the channels and not allow them to operate freely as far as possible, reduce their operation. So for that, worldwide there is cooperation by different agencies. We will see slightly later on. So money laundering is very important in insurance also, because if you see other channels, insurance is the easiest channel, or rather simplest channel, where money laundering can be done. The easiest form of money laundering is premium can be paid in cash, but refund given by insurance company is always by check. So if you are paying premium out of your black market money, or what we say dirty money, when refund is given, you will receive by way of check. So you will receive clean money. This is the easiest way. We will see other parts. So what is money laundering? It is conversion of illegitimate money into legitimate money. The money on which income tax is not paid, or money which is received out of doing illegal businesses, which is earned out of doing illegal trafficking of narcotics, trafficking of goods which are smuggled goods, or money which is stolen. So it doesn't go into banking channels or legitimate channels, remains in force, remains in circulation through illegal channels. And once money remains in illegal channels, it is very easy to use it for illegal purposes. So that creates law and order problem also. So we saw that it can be used for narcotics, it can be used for encourage of terrorism, etc. So it is very important to control money laundering. So money laundering means placement of illegitimate money into legitimate financial network. In layman's language, conversion of black money into white money. Money is washed. That's why it is called laundering. Black money becomes white money. Color is not change of currency notes. Notes will remain same. But the method, by some illegitimate methods, they are converted so that white money can be used for other purposes and in luxurious items, investment in real estate, speculation, etc. Okay, another part of money laundering is to control circulation of counterfeit currency also. So generally, there are stages in money laundering: layering, conversion. In layering, money is converted from black to white. Then movement of fund is taken out of the sources, so that original source is not known, and the money is recognized as legitimate money. So what is done generally? Black money is put into system. Suppose person is having huge amount of cash which is not recorded. So what he will do? He will put money into bank or financial institutions, or put into investments like post office schemes, etc. He will put in small amounts. Suppose I am having 1 lakh rupees, which is black money. I will put 5,000 in many investments, so that 5,000 rupees is small amount. Nobody is bothered. So money becomes white over a period of time. So what was black money becomes white money on conversion. Then once it is converted, it will become white money. So what is done? Multiple transactions are created to shift money from black to white, and the transaction numbers are so many that a time will come that it is difficult to find out the source. Suppose if I am putting say 50,000 rupees, or say less than 50,000 rupees in my bank account, every day I will put 45,000, 40,000. I will go on putting the money in bank account, or create deposit, fixed deposit with different banks or smaller amounts. Then after some time I will transfer that money into other accounts, from one account to another to further. So from A account to B account, B account to C, C to D, I will make payment to other people. Then that person will make payment once again to me. So numerous transactions are created. That original source of my depositing amount by cash is lost. So now nobody knows that from where that money has come. So in this way also, money is converted from black to white. With computer system, though it is possible, but it is difficult, and sometimes smaller banks or smaller financial institutions are also interested in conversion of this money to complete their target, etc. So that our RBI also having some regulations about that. We will see those later. So we saw that smaller deposits are made to convert black money into white money. This is called smurfing. Sometimes shell companies are created. Bogus companies are created by accounting experts. These companies are therefore namesake. They don't have any business. They don't carry on any business. They are only on paper, but they comply with all the regulations and requirements of Companies Act. They form the companies. They are having the registered office on paper. They are having directors, employees, everything on paper. So why this is to be done? These companies are shown to be doing some business, so they generate some income. That income is brought into company. So income is by way of conversion of cash into legitimate income. So these companies are having shown as income, and income is coming from sources which are not known. So black money becomes white. These companies will pay income tax on whatever scarce they are to be paid. So on original amount, if no income tax is paid, because it is black money, so when it is converted into white money as business income, then they can pay out of that business income expenses also, and whatever amount of profit remains, on that income tax is paid. So, amounts are withdrawn as expenses. Generally, they are paid to their employees who are not working but just shown as employees on paper, and small amount is paid as income tax. So, these shell companies also generate black money, convert black money into white money. So, there are many cases in which the registered office of many companies is small location. If you see the list of the directors, they are illiterate people or peons or small or normal employees are shown as directors who are not otherwise qualified. But to convert black money into white money, they are operating as companies. The easiest way to convert black money into white money or to do money laundering is to take help of overseas banks, and particularly of the countries where there are no regulations or they are not guided by any banking regulations. Till now, Swiss banks were very much famous or infamous for this type of conversion. Cash is diverted out of country to these banks. They will not inquire about source of fund, and they will open the accounts, and whenever money is required in the country of origin, they are retransferred as if it is coming from legitimate source. When bank transfers money from overseas country to India, it will come by legitimate channel. But while going out, money will go in form of cash. Now, how to transfer cash? That is also a system, illegitimate system called Hawala transaction, in which mafias and gangs are involved, and sometimes terrorists are also involved in transferring money. So, overseas banks are also doing this type of transaction of money laundering. That's why RBI regulations are strict for working of overseas bank or for money coming into India. In insurance, we are concerned with that under General Insurance Memorandum Regulation or Life Insurance Memorandum Regulations about payment of premium, about payment of claims under policies which are issued in India. Then alternative banking is also called underground banking. As I told you, these are called Hawala transactions. Their dealing is through cash transactions by people who are not operating as legalized banks. They do all banking activity, but they are not registered as banks. They do private business, and dealing is only in form of cash. So money transfer etc. is done through Hawala transactions. There is no record, so no tax is to be paid, no regulations are there. Another form of money laundering is telegraphic transfer. When you transfer money by post office, you have to pay cash, and when money is received by that person, he receives from post office. So receiver is receiving money which is recorded by post office, so it becomes legitimate transaction. Return of premium is very important aspect in insurance. As I told you earlier, premium can be paid in cash. Any policy is cancelled, it is to be refunded. Now, refund insurance companies cannot pay in cash. So, refund will come by crossed checks. So, refund is coming in legitimate manner. At the time of paying premium, insurance company will not inquire about my source of money. So, I may pay my black money. There is no declaration to be given. I may pay black money and then cancel the policy. So, premium is returned to me in check. So, black money is converted into white money. This is the easiest method. So, many times people take policies and then they apply for cancellation. So, generally cancellation is discouraged in all branches of insurance, or for cancellation insurance companies charge higher premium, or at least they charge for risk cover. So return of premium is easiest aspect. Many times insurance companies allow free look-in period. In that case, policyholder is given option to retain the policy for shorter period like 15 days and take decision within 15 days whether he would like to continue insurance or no. After 15 days free look-in period, he can apply for cancellation of policy stating that he is not satisfied. So he can take policy and apply for cancellation stating that he is not satisfied. So when premium is paid, it can be paid in cash. When it is written in check. So black money is converted into white money. So that's why IRDA and other agencies are much concerned about insurance sector also. Many times premium is paid more than whatever is due. Why it is paid more? So that insurance company will allow refund. They cannot keep extra premium. So we have paid premium in cash, refund is given to you in check. So easiest method, black money is converted into white money. Okay. Now we saw money laundering methods. Now we'll go through Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002. As we saw earlier, the black money was creating problem on security aspect because of terrorism, narcotics, trafficking, etc. The act was formed in India in 2002. The main objectives of act are prevention, control and combating of money laundering. So for that, certain regulations are framed which are to be followed by agencies dealing in finance. This is applicable to insurance companies also. It also provides for confiscation of property which is purchased out of black money and other incidental matters. As we saw that foreign currency, foreign banks are also involved in money laundering. RBI guidelines are also there. They are more concerned with banking sector, but insurance can also be affected by life insurance and non-life insurance by LIM and GIM regulations, which we saw earlier. So as per RBI guidelines, banks and financial institutions have to keep records of all the cash received by them, and if transaction is more than 10 lakhs, they have to keep record of that. Recently you must have seen that wherever more than 50,000 is deposited by cash in any bank account, one has to give PAN number of income tax. Without that it is not possible to deposit more than 50,000 in cash in any bank. So they have to follow the RBI guidelines. And whatever records are there, they should be maintained for longer period. They should be maintained in tight security, but security should be such that wherever some data is required about certain clients, about certain accounts holder, they should be easily retrievable. Then auditors of the banks and financial institutions should evaluate the KYC guidelines, know your customer guidelines, and they should be satisfied about that, and in dissatisfaction by auditors should be recorded, and the concerned entities should try to correct those things. As we saw earlier, money laundering and problems coming out of that are not of India, they are worldwide, because terrorism and narcotic and drugs trafficking is big problem everywhere. So it is international problem, requires international cooperation. So for that, FATF is formed called Financial Action Task Force, which is suggesting many guides and measures to control money trafficking, money laundering, narcotic etc. trafficking and other related matters. It also encourages to set up of intergovernment bodies to combat money laundering and terrorism. The objective of international efforts is to uncover money laundering and inform the other countries what techniques are used so that they can be controlled, harmonize anti-money laundering laws internationally and to induce combating measures. India is also a member of Asia Pacific Group, which is formed for Asia Pacific region, and observer at Financial Action Task Force. CFT is countering financial terrorism. So controlling money laundering is also important in countering financial terrorism, because we saw that whatever black money or bad money or dirty money is in circulation, that is used in terrorist activities. So once money laundering is controlled, these activities also can be controlled, because terrorists cannot purchase bombs etc. out of checks or other legitimate methods. Indian laws were there earlier also. For example, NDPS, Narcotics and Psychotropic Substances Act. Psychotropic means those substances which can affect working of mind. So this act was there in 85, is there in since 1985. Then prevention of illicit traffic in narcotics and drugs and psychotropic substances was also introduced in 1988. Then Foreign Exchange Management Act is also there since 1999. Foreign Exchange Management Act is connected with foreign currency, and as we saw that this is international phenomena. Money can be sent out of India in illegal manner and can brought into India through legal channels, so it can also affect money laundering. So FEMA also lays down rules and regulations concerning with insurance fields or non-insurance fields also under Foreign Exchange Management Act. So as we saw that PMLA Act is there, for Prevention of Money Laundering Act is also there in India since 2002. Now, to control money laundering, it is important to know the clients and customers with whom insurance companies and other financial sectors are dealing with. So it is important to find out who is the customer. So for that, the guidelines are about identifying the customer, validating the process, verifying the customer information to ensure that the customer is genuine, whoever is coming to you as a customer is your customer and not anybody else, so that there are guidelines about asking photo identity for certain types of financial transaction, plus any of the other things like passport, driving license, PAN card, then VIC, EIC, SCC, etc. SCC, Social Security card, etc. or senior citizen card. Then for address proof you require electricity bill, passbook or bank statement, or telephone bill, mobile bill, lease agreement, employer's letter stating that this person is working with me for last so many years and his address is as per our records. Bank statement, generally bank statement gives client's address. Ration card is never issued with that address, so it is also one of the proofs. Passport, then gas connection card, is also treated as address proof. Certificate from government or local bodies stating that address of particular person is as stated. So these are recognized documents as address proof. So wherever any address proof is required, these are to be called for. Generally, as far as insurance companies are concerned, we require photo identity for medical insurance or any claim under medical insurance policy, and when claims above 1 lakh are settled, address proof etc. is also asked for. We will see slightly later on. Now customers are of different type, low risk customer and high risk customer. So insurance companies should be trying to classify and take precautions as far as they come across when they come across high risk customers. Low risk customers are those whose identity and sources of fund can be easily verified. So that as far as they are concerned, money laundering risk with them is not much. Generally they are salaried employees, people with lower income, government departments, regulators etc. who are taking insurance. So they are low risk. They are not having black money because their operations are very simple. They don't have much money. Even if they may be having some black money, it may not be significant amount. But as far as high risk customers are concerned, their identification and source of fund is not easily verifiable. That's why they are treated as high risk, and generally they are non-resident Indians. You don't know the source of income overseas, whether they are doing legitimate business or dealing in smuggling etc. activities. But as far as insurance companies are concerned, they are high risk customers. So many times, particularly life insurance companies are after NRIs etc. because of high premium income from likely to be generated from them, so that there are more restrictions on them, more verifications is required, so that money laundering doesn't take place. High net worth individuals, people who are very rich, may be having many sources of income, and because they are having big money, they are operating in India, where black money is in circulation more than white money. So to control that, insurance company also should take appropriate measures wherever they are dealing with them as their policy holders. Then trust. Most of the time trusts are formed to convert black money into white money. Huge amounts are shown as income to the trust. So black money is converted into white money. NGOs also help in conversion of black money into white money when they collect donations or they receive donations from overseas. So government is having strict regulations on operation of NGOs, and also wherever money is remitted from overseas, there are strict regulations from Reserve Bank of India. Firms with sleeping partners. Now sleeping partners are those partners which are not doing any work for the firm. They are just for the namesake. So what happens? They don't contribute to the business of the company, business of the firm, but they get profit out of the working of the firm. So they don't pay anything, they don't work for the company, they may be doing any other activity, but money is paid to them. So they are not doing anything, so they get the money, so they get white money. Money is paid to them by way of check, etc. So these are the types of customers with high risk profile. Now KYC norms for insurance companies. Wherever we pay any claim more than 1 lakh, then due diligence procedure is required to be followed. We have to ask for identification proof and address proof, etc. And wherever any amount is paid to the third party, more care is to be taken. Wherever premium is to be paid by third party, we have to verify that that person is having insurable interest. In case of minor policies taken by guardian, etc., then insurable aspect is clear. But debtor-creditor relationship, etc., when life insurance policy is taken, care is to be taken to verify insurable interest aspect. Legally, claim can be assigned to third party, but such practice is to be followed with utmost care and keeping in mind guidelines of KYC. Payment is to be made in case of claims by account pay checks or by e-payment. Presently, many insurance companies are following method of either paying e-payment or direct credit to the accounts of the claimants. Even account pay checks can be transferred and can go into e-regimented hands. To avoid that, this method is started by many insurance companies, and time may come when it may become a market practice. Insurance company has to keep check over frequent cancellation of covers. We saw that premium can be paid by cash. When cover is cancelled, return of premium is by way of check. So frequent cancellation is to be taken care, and if the transaction is arising some suspicion, then detailed investigation is to be made or higher authorities are to be informed. Assignment of policy to non-related person is also to be investigated. If it is to be consideration, then it is okay. Otherwise, life insurance policy can also be assigned for non-consideration. So we have to see that purpose is not to convert black money into white money. So in between there was time in India when policies were purchased and assigned, purchased by assignment by paying money in cash, and then on date of maturity money was being collected from insurance company, but IRD has prohibited these type of practices. The purpose is to avoid money laundering. There are guidelines for anti-money laundering and countering financial terrorism. For insurance companies, these guidelines have been formed by IRDA. A senior compliance officer is to be there, which should be head chief risk officer. He should be preferably looking after audit and compliance aspect of company. Control measures should be approved by board. If any case is there, it is to be accepted only up to 50,000. Higher amount, it should be by a check. In case of banks, reporting of cash transaction more than 10 lakh in a month, it should be reported to RBI or other authorities nominated, or to financial intelligence agencies. Cash transaction, in case of cash transaction, if any counterfeit notes are received, immediately it is to be informed to the controlling agency. In many cases, it may be police authorities also. If NGO receives more than 10 lakhs in foreign currency, then it is to be reported to RBI and other agencies, and any suspicious transaction coming into notice of any financial institution, it is to be reported to higher ups. So that was about money laundering and other aspects. Now we'll see receipt of premium. In what form the premium can be received under insurance policies. Cash is the best method because the risk can commence immediately when premium is paid in cash. But as we saw that cash can also create problem about money laundering, So while receiving premium in cash, care is to be taken by insurance company, and if premium is more than 50,000, then other precautions like KYC norms are also to be considered. It can be paid by check, pay order and demand drafts. Payment of premium by check is the most convenient method. Pay order and demand drafts are also convenient. In case of check, insurance company gets money after check is honored, but as far as commencement of risk is concerned, it commences from the date of giving check to the insurance company, provided that on presentation check is honored. If check is dishonored due to any reason, the risk is cancelled from the date of inception. So payment by check, pay order on demand draft is okay. There is no problem about that. But in case of suspicious transaction, when premium is paid by pay order or demand draft, insurance company may carry out investigation and may follow KYC guidelines properly. It can be paid by postal money order also. In case of payment by postal money order, the risk can commence from date of booking of money order. Money order can be booked today with post office, but can be received by insurance company later. So if insurance company is aware about the date of booking, then it can start the risk from the date of booking and not from the date of receipt. Generally, it is useful for renewal of policies. Then payment can be made by debit and credit card also. In case of debit and credit card, the risk commences when insurance company receives the money from debit and credit card agencies. Bank guarantee is also one of the convenient methods, subject to certain stipulations. It can be accepted. We will see later on about bank guarantee. Then direct credit into the bank account through ECS or other methods. Online fund transfer is also available for payment of premium, or any other method as approved by IRDAI from time to time. Earlier, debit and credit cards were not accepted by insurance companies, but after formation of IRDAI regulations, now Indian insurance market is accepting premium by debit and credit cards. Now, Section 64 VB of Insurance Act 1938. You heard about this section in other subjects also. We will have brief because it is part of our course also. It is about advance payment of premium. If payment is not paid properly, the insurance policy is not enforceable. In life insurance, it depends on terms and conditions. In general insurance, full premium is to be paid in advance. Life insurance, full premium may not be paid in advance. It is paid generally in installments by monthly payments, quarterly payments, etc. So it depends upon terms and conditions of the policy. There it can be single premium also. But a single premium is not a routine, it is exception. Whereas in general insurance, payment of full premium at once is market practice. Generally, policies are for 1 year, so full annual premium is to be paid in advance under non-life of general insurance policy. Whether to collect recovery charges from client or no is insurance company discretion, because wherever outstation checks are given, insurance company has to pay some bank charges, and in certain cases it may be substantial amount, particularly in case of small premiums. So in that case, insurance company can decide whether to collect these charges from the client or no. If premium is sent by postal money order or check, the risk can commence from the date of booking of check, provided the check is posted by registered AD. So on the date of registration, the risk can commence. So registered letter or letter sent by speed post, risk can commence from the date of booking. But if check is sent by courier or messenger, risk will commence only on the date of receipt and not on date of booking with courier or giving to messenger. Because postal department is treated as government department, is part of government department, and their records are authentic, manipulation is not possible. There are certain exceptions to aspect of advance payment of premium, particularly non-life insurance. Government and semi-government undertaking, they can pay premium within 30 days of assumption of risk. So 30 days credit can be given, provided these undertakings are given in writing that within 30 days they will pay full premium to the insurance company. Similarly, sickness, PA, Mediclaim and hospitalization schemes, when they are on group basis, installment facilities can be given. How many installments? That depends upon insurance companies. Similarly, under fidelity guarantee insurance premium, insurances, premium is charged on provisional basis. At the end of the policy, it is adjusted on number of employees. So when policy is taken, cover is granted for provisional number of employees, which is to be adjusted at the end. So whatever number of employees are there at the inception of policy, on them policy premium is charged, and at the end of the policy period, suppose employees are more, because of their joining during the period of insurance, balance of premium can be collected. So premium is paid partly in advance, partly at the end, so there is no problem about compliance of section 64BB. Many times in case of big risk, the proposal of mainly in the fire or industrial all risk policy, proposal is to be referred to head office of insurance company to get some reinsurance code. So in such cases, proposal can be accepted by charging provisional premium, which is to be adjusted at the end when the rate is decided by the head office of insurance company. So it is not a violation of 64BB, though premium is taken twice, first as provisional, when it is finalized, balance premium is collected. It is treated as if full premium is paid in advance. So adjustable policies, we saw fidelity guarantee or any other policy which is issued as adjustable. Earlier stock liquidation policy and loss of profit policies were issued as adjustable policies, but now presently they are not allowed as adjustable policy. So they are not part of this scheme. Aviation hull and marine insurance hull, though they are for a period of 1 year, premium can be paid in installments. Generally, quarterly installments are allowed under aviation hull and marine insurance hull. Why? Because the premiums are huge. Long-term policies, CAR, ER, premium can be paid in installments. So any policy about 12 months period is treated as long-term policy, and premium can be paid in installments depending upon certain rules and regulations or market practice. Scheduled and consecutive loss policies, earlier it was allowed, now it is not allowed. Scheduled policies are the policies generally under fire and burglary policies which are covering many locations in one policy. So to calculate premium and decide about final premium, it takes time, and insured may be wanting to give exact sum insured. So earlier longer period was allowed, now it is not there, so premium is to be paid in advance. In case of co-insurance, lead insurance company will collect full premium. It may give share to the co-insurance companies later on. So as far as co-insurance companies are concerned, they are receiving premium later, it doesn't violate Section 64VB. Similarly, reinsurance companies will receive premium later than commencement of risk, particularly in case of treaties. So there also it is not a violation. Then under National Agriculture Insurance Scheme, premium can be paid in installments. Then there are two other methods where premium can be paid by way of bank guarantee or cash deposit. Under IRDA regulation, these methods are also allowed. So client, instead of paying premium, it gives guarantee from the banker that up to particular amount, if premium is not paid, then his bankers will pay. So as per insurance market practice and regulations under Insurance Rule 1939, whatever amount is guaranteed, that amount, up to that amount only insurance company can accept the risk. Suppose client has submitted bank guarantee of 1 lakh, so insurance company can give policies up to 1 lakh rupees premium only. What is the system? That whatever amount is debited to bank guarantee account in current month, the premium is to be paid by end of next month. It is not day-to-day month, it is calendar month. So suppose whatever amount is debited in current month, suppose current month is October, it is to be paid by end of November. It is irrespective of commencement of date of policy. Whether policy commences from 1st October or 30th October, premium is to be paid by 30th November. If it is not paid by 30th November, insurance company has to approach guaranteeing bank for recovery of the premium. Otherwise, it is violation. Similarly, cash deposit, whatever cash deposit is made, it works like bank guarantee system. You debit to that, not debit, but keep record of that premium up to that amount and raise the bill on the client, pay by next calendar month, like bank guarantee. In bank guarantee, no deposit is given to the insurance company. This deposit is like fixed deposit. But in insurance market, this system is slightly amended. It is not treated as cash deposit. In most of the cases, it is treated as premium deposit. So instead of waiting for insured to pay premium by end of the next calendar month, insurance companies are immediately debiting the account. So it is premium deposit account. This is market practice, not part of insurance rules. Now see advertising regulations. Advertising is marketing tool. It is required for all insurance companies. It encourages sell. Without advertising, you will not know what products are available. So once client is knowing about the products, having some idea about the product, selling becomes faster, easier. Customer also becomes receptive to the sales. Why? Because he is aware about insurance companies. Companies which are not advertising, the name may not be familiar with by the client. He may not be aware, so he will not take much interest in the product. So once the name is known to the client, he will become more receptive. He will listen to the sales staff and try to listen. It enhances the public image of company. The company which is advertises, his name is known. So people will come to know that this company is there in the market. It must be big. Has to create new products. When company is advertising, it will get suggestion from many quarters, many customers, many non-customers, and it can devise new products because demand may also come from different quarters. It will also influence public opinion about certain products which are available in the market. But advertising can mislead the customer or general public because it will try to misguide, and particularly in case of insurance, it will misguide the client to purchase products which are not required for the customer. It generally happens when it fails to identify the product correctly. It is sold as insurance, but it is basically an investment plan. So in that case, IRDAI, we saw that is having many regulations. High claims are projected that you will get higher returns at the end of policy term. It may not realize, because higher that generally in case of life insurance, the term of policy is longer. At the end, what will happen? Nobody knows, but insurance companies can project that at the end of policy term, this much will be the return. It may not materialize. That's why this is controlled by IRDAI, and they have said that there should not be such false claims. Describe benefits not matching to the policy. If some benefits are listed, they may not match with actual policy. They may remain only advertising. So this advertising is not allowed under IRDAI advertising regulations. High risk factor, like in relief policy, if client is not informed that as far as investment part is concerned, it is subject to market fluctuation. Whatever will be NAV on the date of vesting will be paid. So it is misguiding advertisement. Such things are not allowed. Most of the advertisement try to hide exclusions. What is not covered is also important in any insurance. So in insurance advertisement, exclusions are to be mentioned. It is not possible to mention all the exclusions. Then they have to state that the source of the information from where the client can get list of exclusions. Similarly, they should not give misleading information. Wrong examples should not be given. If some examples are given, they should be realistic. Calculation of return on under a ULIP policy or how claim will be settled, those examples, etc. should be on realistic basis. And whenever any comparison is given, either between two products or products of two insurance companies, they should be identical products or identical schemes. They should not be misguiding. You cannot compare personal accident policy premium and say that it is very low compared to Mediclaim insurance policy. So both should be identical products. You are comparing personal accident, compare with personal accident. Don't compare it with Mediclaim. When you are comparing Mediclaim, compare it with medical insurance policy. So there are compliances and control under IRDAI regulations and the regulations are applicable to insurer and intermediaries. Not insured, insurer and intermediaries. Insurer and intermediary should have compliance officer, and the name is to be informed to the IRDAI. He will be supposed to looking after compliances of all the regulations formed by IRDAI for advertisement. He should have control over advertisement process, and for that a register is to be maintained. Records are to be maintained at corporate office of insurance company or intermediary. Whoever intermediary is involved in advertisement should comply with all these regulations. If broker is involved, he has to do the process. Agent is involved, corporate agency is involved, he has to do the process. Whatever advertisements are published, they should be serial number, identifiable, and specimens are to be maintained for 3 years. Copy of advertisement is to be filed with IRDA with full particulars, identification number, description and method of use, whether it is newspaper advertisement, television advertisement or given in net, all the information is to be given, and filing is to be done as early as possible, not later than 30 days. And at the end of the financial year, compliance officer has to give report which is to be submitted to IRDA about compliance. In case of any complaint by member of public or policy holder, IRDA can take suitable action. It can issue letter to the insurance company or intermediary asking for information, and once information is asked, it is to be given within 10 days. If it is not given, IRDA can take suitable action, including suspension of license, cancellation of license, non-renewal of license, etc. On receipt of information, IRDA can direct the agency or insurer to correct the advertisement. Now suppose first advertisement on a particular newspaper, the correcting advertisement should also appear in same newspaper, so that similar number of people are getting the information. So TV advertisement cannot be corrected by newspaper advertisement, or advertisement in national newspaper correction cannot be issued in local newspaper. So it should be in same media of identical capacity. It can also direct insurance company to discontinue the advertisement. Many advertisements are withdrawn on IRDA directing them, or they can take another suitable action, as I told you, suspension of license, etc. So today we saw rural and social sector, IRDA requirements for insurance company. Also we saw micro insurance, products, agents, IRDA requirements, guidelines, etc. Unit-linked insurance plan, unit-linked insurance plan regulations, unit-linked insurance plan guidelines, then regulation of premium, methods of payment of premium, 64VB under Insurance Act, IRDA regulations of payment of premium, exception to these regulations under Insurance Rules 1939, money laundering, counterfeiting, financial terrorism, regulations to control these, procedure to be followed, know your customer guidelines, how we'll apply insurance, advertisement regulations, how to follow in insurance sector. Thank you.